Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Fife Properties Saturday morning show. Today we are speaking about millennial landlords and how to help your child build their own buy-to-let business. Now, Jim, could you hear us okay?
Yeah, perfectly well.
The picture's quite good. So where are you?
I'm at Glastonbury Festival. I'm in the Green Futures field.
Good. The weather looks
I'll do
good
a
anyway.
quick look actually. All the way around. It's all the things of the green of the future. All the way around. This is just one part. This is huge. 200,000 people congregate in this place. And it's all about, it's theatre and arts. It's everybody thinks it's all about music, but it's not. That's just a small proportion of what goes on here.
Yeah.
But so it's a theatre and arts festival. That's what it mainly is, and music's just a small proportion of that, because you've got the green fields, you've got the healing fields, you've got the green futures fields, you've got the Croissant Neuf. These are all different areas. You've got Greenpeace, you've got WaterAid, you've got Oxfam, you've got Shelter. They're all here doing their bit and getting involved. Yeah, it's massive. It's a huge event. It raises millions for charity. Millions, like 5-6 million.
Oh, that's good. I think the big talk is the headline. Is Elton John, is that tonight, tomorrow? When is that?
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow.
There's going to be a lot of people on stage saying farewell to Elton John. This will be his final last concert.
I think he's collaborating with 4 people, which is what they've kept under wraps. I don't know who that is. So
probably a lot more.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be a good atmosphere for you then, seeing that.
Yeah, I'll maybe be in my bed by then.
Well, I saw you managed to find a run. I was like, of course.
Yeah, all these Generation X people like myself, tend to go to their bed about 10 o'clock.
Well, that was the first thing I was going to talk about. I was going to say good morning, Karen, but obviously you're here with us joining this morning to speak about that. And Karen and I are millennials ourselves, and you, Jim, are Generation X. So the question I was going to ask you first is, what do you think the stark difference is between for when you started out to landlords and investors starting out now?
Oh, probably we had to work harder. We had to blaze the trail. For what went on, because there was no such thing as buy-to-let at that time. So I just had to think on my feet and make it up as I went along. So it was literally just cutting down, almost like you're saying you're going to try and build a road in a jungle, almost trying to get your way through that and put as straight a road as possible to the route you want to get to. But luckily I've done that. It's the financial freedom blueprint we talk about, and we talked about that at the PIN meeting. It was put together in order to get somebody quicker from A to B in terms of financial freedom.
Yeah, and you also had, you had a lot of back and forward with, like you say, there wasn't a product as buy-to-let mortgaging, and you had a lot of back and forward with the banks, and in some cases we're guiding them and advising them of how it works. And
yeah, I'm not trying to be in the festival. I'm just trying to keep the sun out my eyes.
Trying not to get bunched.
It's like I look like Stig of the Dump. I must have gone through about 100 bank managers who said no to me in the very beginning, and I was only wanting to buy a house at one bedroom flat at £15,500, and I had the deposit for it, but just none of them would bother about accepting a second home, like a buy-to-let property. They're like, no, we don't do that. We just do mortgages for you to stay in homes. That's it. We don't do anything else other than that. And then I was thinking to myself, where does everybody stay then? It needs rented accommodation, because 70% of the social housing was sold off in the 1980s. Oh my God! I mean, where do these people stay? And then that's when I started to realise that a lot of these people actually just almost couch surfed and actually stayed with relatives and friends and everything like that until they outstayed their welcome and they had to move on.
So there was
which was quite tragic. Yeah, definitely I need. And I was lucky enough after asking so many people. This is all about I know it's just a yes waiting to happen.
Yeah,
that's all. So every time you get a no, you're closer to a yes. And at that point, that's when they turned round. A bank manager at the Bank of Scotland turned around to me and said, "Yep, that sounds credible. I could do that." But he did term loans. So more or less like capital repayment. So we gave me a 20-year fund, a 20-year period, and it was a term loan decreasing. So it went down in value like a capital repayment mortgage. but it was just they were classed as a term loan and took a security over the property. Now, I deal with the banks in that scenario today because I'm not a mainstream buy-to-let, typical buy-to-let landlord now. I'm what you classify as a corporate landlord. So, I have to go to banks for big lending, millions. So they won't do that in normal buy-to-let mortgages anymore.
Right, so that has to be. So that's why you're classed, obviously, as a corporate landlord, because you're lending and doing deals at a different level now.
Yeah, so I've been through from the scratch. So obviously I had to start somewhere. So I've been from the very beginning, from just one property to where I am today with all the properties I've got, and then the portfolio that I'm about to buy, which will increase my portfolio by 50% overnight.
Yeah.
And for me, well, that's the future. For me, that's the future. That's where my pension is. So,
yeah, well,
and I'll talk about this. Yeah, that's, and we'll when we talk about that anyway. Let's.
Yeah, well, I was just going to go into there. Obviously, we're following our blog that's attached to this show, and what it touches on to start with is imagining if your children were already financially independent by the time they were 25, and how proud you would be of them. And I think, but that's one of the main drivers of you doing what you do, and one of your ultimate goals was to help your children and let them stand on your success and be able to success even further in their own lives and be in a position when they hit that age to be able to and not start from scratch again. We speak about that quite a lot in the Wealth Creation Show.
I was taught from a very early age. I was lucky enough to have really good mentors when I was around about 25 years old, 20 to 25 years old, and I had really good mentors who actually let me, almost gave me the foresight to see that pensions would no longer exist in the future because the government couldn't afford to actually fund them anymore. And the only thing is the bare basics they'll be able to fund in the future because we're borrowing all the time to bail ourselves out as a country. America's doing that. They're up to 30 trillion. They have to just get 30 trillion in debt. Jeez. They're almost due more money than they actually have in their net worth. And as a business, you're heading for disaster if you can't sustain that debt level and finance that. I then come back saying, who on earth is financing this? Who is the bank? Is that no America? So they're paying themselves. I don't get it. I don't understand that. There's somebody somewhere. There's something somewhere that's fundamentally flawed in the capitalistic system. This is not just because I'm at Glastonbury, by the way. But there is something fundamentally flawed in the way that system works, and the fact that we can still keep borrowing, and there's almost no requirement now to pay it back.
Yeah, it's just.
But we'll still keep paying. Really. We'll still keep paying interest on the debt. But who we're paying interest to, and where's that money disappearing to? This is the thing that I need to get my head around. But I can't control that. This is only my learnings, what I want to understand. The main point for me is I need to look after what I can control, and what I can control is my income and my wealth is within my grasp, and everybody can do that. There's no reason for people out there who says I can't earn anything, I can't get any more money than I have now. You could. I don't agree with that at all. Anybody at any level, wherever you are, could learn to accumulate wealth, whether that's an extra £100 a month, an extra £500 a month, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 a month. You could all learn to do that in some shape or form. The key here is you've just got to pay the price. But remember, the bill from regret is a lot more.
Yeah, and I think in order to do that, you need to cut out the things that you're spending money unnecessarily on, or cutting back on things that you don't really need to be doing, that cost that extra money. And we've done all that in previous shows, but there is ways and means of doing that, and it's all about wealth creation, and we talk about that on a Monday. But yeah, helping your child build their buy-to-let business and things is really important, and helping your child be in a position where they're financially independent, because with the massive housing shortage at the moment in the UK and rents being pushed up higher and higher, this means that more private landlords are urgently needed, and the buy-to-let model as the ideal business to begin at a young age, if you've got the right people showing you what to do as well. So, I mean, people can buy a property as soon as they turn 18 and starting with low value, high yield homes, they can slash the cost of getting and get going with an excellent and earn an excellent short-term return. I would say long-term investment, but do you know what I mean? It puts them in a good position to then be financially free so much earlier on in their life. And I think that's such an important thing, because the first thing we're going to talk about is deposits and how people are helping child save deposits. Karen, do you want to lead us into deposits and how people and parents and things, the bank of mum and dad, such thing?
Yeah, so obviously the bank of mum and dad has become the only way for a lot of first-time buyers to get on the property ladder. There are various ways that you can help your children though. So obviously not everyone can do this one, but the most obvious way is simply gifting them the entire deposit. But it's not the only option. So for a lot of people, you could let them live in your home, and any money that they would have typically allocated towards their rent, they put into a savings pot. So this means obviously when it comes around to the point of them getting ready to move out, they'll have a nice little nest egg for them to sit in. So thankfully, that was my agreement as I sit in my house.
Because you've recently become a new homeowner in the last couple of years. I mean, you've been in your house 2 years now, has it?
Probably two, almost 2 years now. So thankfully my mum and dad had done it, that we didn't pay any dig money, but the money that we would have paid towards that, we had to put into our savings. And obviously when it came around to the point that both me and my brother were in our earlier 20s, we were in the position to be able to put down the deposit for our houses, and we both sit in our houses now. So definitely, obviously there's not a lot of parents that maybe have the extra funding just to give your child a deposit. So I mean, it's great if they do, but obviously there's various different ways that people can go about it to obviously accommodate their own finances. So that's one of the ways that can be quite beneficial.
I think that's a fantastic way to do it, Karen. I did that for Ben and Scott and Tony as well. They've got lifetime ISAs, plus they put money into their pension as well every single month, and we don't ask them for anything for living in the home or any rent or digs or anything like that. Now there's a train of thought, and I grew up like this, where my mother and father were like that as well with me. You've got to pay digs, you've got to pay your way. Well, I just think I don't know. I think we're indoctrinating our children into the same ways as we are. And if you keep doing the same things as the previous generation, you'll keep getting the same results. So do you really want to actually, and some people out there will go, nothing wrong with where I am just now. And that's fine. More power to you. If you want more for your children though, you just got to think a bit different. And that's a perfect example, Kim.
It is. It's about growth. Obviously, there's different generations that, like you say, you could just keep doing it the same way, but there's a chance for different results if you do kind of learn from how you'd grown up for it. So obviously, thankfully, my mum and dad did it this way. So, and it worked out well for us. And it teaches you to save from that young age as well and manage your money efficiently. Whereas obviously a lot of people would be in a position where they've been able to spend what they want as teenagers, for example, with their first job coming in, and they have no money to fall back on because they've just been able to spend it. So if you're teaching your child to save even a little bit from the start, it obviously gives them that benefit going on later in life. So obviously there's other options. So you could also match their funds pound for pound. So it gives them a bit of an incentive. Obviously, the more they save, the more that you're putting into it as well. So it gives them that extra little nudge along the way for it. So potentially another option for them as well if you're in that position. So as well as helping your children into the property ownership, also investing them to, like I say, it teaches them to save their money as well. So it's going to benefit them later on in life when they're in that position. They can put down their deposit on their first home.
Yeah, I think it just, like you said, it puts them in a position where they're able to accelerate themselves from a position where they're not starting from scratch, but also there's a lot to learn there. There's a lot of lessons to learn there, it gives them a sense of responsibility and things as well. So people might feel you're just handing them everything, but there's ways and means of doing that to make them appreciate and learn from that, obviously, experience and things, rather than just saying, well, I had to do it, you have to do it.
And it teaches them to be self-sufficient as well, because if you're teaching them to save their money, it's the rewarding factor of, I mean, granted, it doesn't feel too good when you see it going out your bank account, but when you're sitting in your house for it, it is nice. Obviously, it's the rewarding feeling of, it was my money that paid for this house.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've seen it as well. We saw a report this week from the BBC, and I think it was based on like 100%, basically, we'll say. So out of Scotland, there is, I think it's 81% out of the 100
not 83.
for rental properties, and the supply is only 18%.
Yeah.
So for people even trying to get into rental properties just now is absolutely crazy. And like you say, rents are getting pushed because of it, because there is such a shortage of supply. So if somebody is in a position to be a first-time buyer, it saves them going into potentially rental properties and paying the higher rents that people are maybe having to just now, when they can be paying their mortgage and investing in themselves.
But then on the flip side, to rent now is for a lot of people a better option than trying to like we talk a lot about entrance and exit fees for mortgages and things, but even the mortgage rates just now, it works out better for them to rent. And I've seen that a lot. We see that a lot, Karen.
Yeah, the interest rates just now are putting a lot of people off buying. So we've seen a lot of people that typically would have been buying have decided to go into rentals instead just now, because it gives them that flexibility as well, that when interest rates hopefully do kind of calm down a little bit, that they're in quite a strong position because they are chain free when they go to buy again. So they only have to give their 28 days and they can move on. So it's better than being obviously in a chain if they're looking to purchase again further down the line.
I can't see interest rates calming down anytime soon.
I hope they do.
Karen's renewing hers this year.
Yes, that's painful. I wish I'd taken a 5-year initial rate rather than the 2.
Well, my advice, interest rates will go up, base rates will go up to about 5.5%. They might go a bit higher. Remember, there's a lot of stress testing went on by the bank, so the government knows you can afford it. Well, you don't actually think you can, because usually it's in luxury items that you don't really need. That money could be diverted to. However, what I'd suggest to most people, including yourself, Karen, is speak to your bank right now to see if there's a deal you could do right now, which could be more beneficial to take now rather than actually wait, especially if you feel that you can't afford any more interest rate hikes, and it might put you in a vulnerable situation in terms of your mortgage and affordability, because then it gives you certainty for the next couple of years even. Because I do think this is going to be here for a year, possibly even 2 years. I don't think inflation is going to end anytime soon because of the situation in Ukraine and the way it's going. And the one club attempt is just like what Nigel Lawson stood up and said, what good is it me being the Chancellor if the only mechanism you give me to curb inflation is one club in my bag, which is increased base rates all the time. Yeah. And that was a huge criticism of the Thatcher government at that time. And that's exactly where we've gone again. We're not even thinking outside. Yeah, but we're not even thinking outside of the box about indirect taxation. How could we apply that? How could we avoid the taxation on the most vulnerable people, but actually hit the higher earners, not really the astronomical higher earners, because proportionally, if you hit them with a huge tax hike, you're going to get nothing out of them, really, because a lot of them don't actually pay tax in the first place because they keep all their money in their businesses. So that's the difficulty of that situation. I would urge anybody, and again, coming back to saying, if your mortgage is up for renewal soon, in the next 6 months, even a year, maybe speak to your bank now, because I don't think base rates are going to come down anytime soon.
Well, I can't agree with you more on that, because mine's is due in October, and obviously I was like, right, get prepared the way things are going for it. So I'd spoken to a couple of mortgage advisors. I spoke to the lender that I'm currently with as well. So they'd sent me out basically like a proposal for the next kind of couple of years fixed rate, which was at 4.9%. I had scheduled in with a call with their advisor, which they were quite busy. So it was a couple of weeks later by the time, and even in the space of those 2 weeks, the interest rate had gone up, not significantly, but from 4.9% to 5.1%. So if I'd managed to get it at that time, it would have been 4.9. But even in the span of those 2 weeks, I'd changed it. So like you say, Jim, if you are up for renewal for your mortgage, speak to somebody sooner than later, because it's not going well. So get yourself sorted before it does
absolutely.
More.
So a classic example of that is I fixed 1.2 million at 2 base rate decisions ago, because I knew base rates were going to continue to go up, and my funding for 1.2 million is based on the base rate. So I fixed it two rate rises up before.
Yeah. which is obviously a good plan. You're obviously planning ahead.
Absolutely.
And
Especially, Richard, you've got the squeeze with the Scottish Government and the restriction in rents in terms of how much you could put it up. So I know where I am in terms of, I know what my rent's going to be, I know what my interest rate's going to be, I know what my overheads, and that's the only thing that's variable, the overheads, which is the maintenance and repairs. And I've got a good margin in there in order to do that. So I will, Gloria Gaynor, I will survive. I just
that's the most important thing.
We're at a music festival, eh?
That is the most important thing. And if you don't plan to survive, then there's more than likely something will occur that will make you obviously you'll have to exit the market. And that's happening to a lot of people now that haven't thought ahead and prepared.
It's the preparation. There's so many people out there taking a chance, and what they're doing is, I think base rates might actually reduce in the next 6 months. Now, hey, they might, but again, I come back to saying, if you can't afford any further base rate rises, you should seriously think about fixing just now, even for the short term.
Yeah.
The good thing with it is obviously my friend is in the same position as myself, and her mortgage advisor, I don't know who it is, said to her to hold off, because I think she's due about the same kind of time as me, around about October time. And he's like, hold off, because they're trying to balance things. And I was like, do not hold off.
No.
It's such bad advice, because at the end of the day, if you go into my current mortgage advisor that I've obviously signed on with for my renewal, has advised that obviously if I sign up for this one, then that's fine, I'm sorted for it. But if anything happens and it does happen to reduce, then I can revise it basically. But you can't get to that point where you're only like a few weeks away and you're getting this mortgage rate, like that's what you're getting. So at least if you're prepared in the first place, you know what rate you're going to be on, and if it does come down, you can revise it. But if it does go up, then you'll be thinking yourself lucky that you sorted it out sooner than later.
Perfect. Okay, well, let's crack on. What else have we got to talk about then?
So next, what I was going to talk about was it's a buy-to-let example to model. Now, this is about, Jim, I know that you've got your buy-to-let portfolios all set up in limited companies, and they are designed to pass on to your family. Obviously on quite a bigger scale, but I mean, while buy-to-let is much better viewed as a long-term investment strategy, there are short-term ways to get the first 2 or 3 properties that can set your child up and set them up for life, even if it's just 2 or 3 properties. I know obviously your portfolio is substantially bigger, Jim, but it's the same premise. But the key is to look at yields rather than capital growth to begin with, and that is the most important thing. You're looking at cash flow as I think what we would always talk about, rather than the capital appreciation of the property. And there are areas in Scotland and across Wales and England and things that currently offer yields that are around about up to like 8 and 9% if you look in the right place and you get the right deal. And they're a great way to build up savings pots and then allows you to do your next purchase, and that's how you build from there. Now, I've got a couple of examples here. So just assuming your purchase price was £80,000, you've got your 25% deposit, which is 20, meaning your mortgage would be on the £60,000 remaining. And then repayments at about £257 over a 35-year term is an interest rate of 5.14%. So we're just talking about mortgage rates now. So that's an example of a property that's £80,000 and doing that as a buy-to-let. Now, initial yields of 9% would produce a monthly rental income for £600. And you think a property about 80,000, Karen, will get about £600. You're talking about a 2 to 3 bedroom house for 80 grand around here. So that probably works out. And that gives you a gross profit of £343 once you do the mortgage and things. And that's your cash flow. Now, obviously, there'll be other factors that you maybe have to put into there, like if you're using a letting agent and somebody to manage it and look after it and things as well. So obviously, after things like buildings and contents insurance, your safety checks, your agency fees, and then that should leave you maybe around about the 250, and that's £3,000 per year, and that's even without any increase in rental values and things. So that example, Jim, I think you would agree is quite a good investment and would generate some good cash flow over the long term and able to build a good
If it's £3,000 a year net income, net profit, then wow, that's unbelievable. But even £1,500, just over £100 a month, that's fine, because remember, you've got to pay all your bills off of that before you get that. So
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
a decent enough return.
that's just an example in an ideal world. But
I mean,
there's a lot of
look at
factors.
look at a classic. If you've got 4 properties, and you're earning another £1,000 a year, for example, there's another £4,000. If it's 1,500, there's another £6,000. So if you've got 4 properties and you've maybe bought these with 25% mortgages, and you are 100,000 you've got, and you've maybe got that equity in your house, and you release it for that reason. Then you could take that 100,000, you could buy the 4 properties, you could actually earn an extra £6,000 a year net income. Job's a good one. That's it. I mean, who wouldn't want another £500 a month?
Yeah, of course.
And then you've got the increase in the capital as well, because if you've bought and leveraged yourself, the 100,000, and leveraged that up with 4 properties, you're probably around another 400,000. So if that appreciates in value in the next 10 to 15 to 20 years, then you've made another 400,000 on that income, the 100,000 you had in the first place. So that's 3 times more, as well as the rent. Wow. We'll just finish up there.
Yeah, I know. But I think the important thing here is obviously that money you need to obviously be putting aside, saving that up for the deposit plus your stamp duty supplement.
It's how to go about it is the most important point. And you're exactly right, Richard. You're talking about the now. It's how to go about it. So let's get on the track of how to go about this. How do I do it?
Yeah. So you put the savings and you put those monies aside in an ISA. Let that pot build up. That allows you to obviously cover the deposit for the next property that you're going to buy, and also your stamp duty supplement and things as well. And then commit to not touching that is really important. Don't dip into it if you're really intent on building the portfolio that's going to obviously generate quite a lot of cash flow once you have it up and running, and it's several properties. And people might think, oh, it's getting a bit stagnant, it's a bit boring, I've just got 1 property, it's bringing, but that will then obviously compound up fairly quickly once time passes. You need to be quite patient in that, and we do talk about that quite a lot, Jim. And then assuming a similar value when it comes around to buying the next home, this time you might get maybe a 95% mortgage, and there should be enough in the pot to cover all the buying costs and things after around about maybe 3 years, and then you've got your next one, and then you have 2 producing income, and then you build it from there. Remember that we're maybe only talking about short term here, but then I think you're better to look at it for the long term, and you can change the house prices and the yields and mortgage terms and things, and possibly the location that you're looking in and things as well. But that's basically what we're talking about. It's a pretty solid plan for using buy to let to speed up the process of owning property and creating cash flow.
I noticed you said about that's a 95% mortgage, and most buy to lets are 75%. So the reason it's a 95% is because you've possibly been in the house for a wee lot longer. You've maybe added a significant amount of value to it. So the original purchase price to the appreciated value to the 75% of that then becomes 95% of the original purchase price that you had. So hopefully everybody understands that. It's leveraging your position and to the whole lot of the money back out, and you go into the next project and recycle your cash, and therefore that's called an infinite return.
Yeah.
What do you get? What do you get in the bank? What do you get in the bank? You don't get an infinite return in the bank.
So that is a pretty solid plan, and if you get that right, then you will be very successful in buy to let. The other thing, obviously, we spoke quite a lot this morning about owning a home. So let's talk about becoming a landlord before you own a home. Owning a home is really it's up there as a top priority with the whole of Britain. I mean, it's something that's kind of ingrained in us for some reason. We're quite different from the rest of the world and the continent and things.
Richard,
rent.
I know why it's ingrained into us, because of the banks.
Yeah.
The banks just want to sell mortgages. The reason that home ownership came about was the banks pushed it forward with creative mortgages in order to allow everybody to buy their home, driven by the Conservative government in the 1980s about the need for home ownership. And the banks got behind it because they were selling loans like they were going out of fashion.
Yeah.
And that's why we're a nation of homeowners and we drive that forward, whereas Europe's completely different.
Yeah. Yeah, it's totally different on the continent, and even in America and things as well. Renting is something that they do predominantly, rather than home ownership. But yeah, so your child might be better off buying their first home as a rental investment. And here's why: because they can avoid the second home stamp duty supplement that you're going to have to pay, which is currently 6%, if they don't already own a home, which means their costs will go down. It could go down towards towards the 25% deposit needed for obviously a buy-to-let mortgage, as we spoke about. The rental income can then be used for them to pay the deposit on the stamp duty supplement on their next property, rather than having to save from just a regular salary. Do you know what I mean? They've got that additional income and things as well. And to boost their buying power for even buying their first home. Do you know what I mean? If you do it on the flip side, a lot of people maybe buy their own home and then start their buy-to-let journey. Do it the other way around. And then they could combine their rental income and then their additional savings. So while home ownership is certainly a dream worth holding on to, and a lot of people do want to do that, maybe becoming a landlord first could prove a faster route to securing their financial future. Kieran, what do you think of that? Obviously, you're a homeowner first before a landlord, and I think you and your partner have the intention of doing buy-to-let or potentially. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like as you say, I think it's quite ideal that if you are going to be quite a longer term student and you're potentially going to be obviously looking for a property that you can be sharing with people, it saves you trying to scramble for a property each year if you are in a position to be able to purchase one and stay in it instead. And then obviously do like renting it out, the other rooms for it, and make a bit of an income for it. And then obviously, like you touched on, you can combine that with some saving, like your rental income with some savings for obviously purchasing your own home when you're maybe further down the line and know where you would like to settle down.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on that, Jim?
You also qualify for the rent a room scheme. If you're actually a student and you're living in the accommodation and you're actually renting it to the other students, you get an allowance of, I think it's either £7,000 or £8,000 a year, tax-free under the rent a room scheme. So that's another great avenue as well. So I can't disagree with that at all. That's a really good route. Often you get, I do know, just what you explained there, Richard, that some people buy their first home, they end up renting it, and they continue to stay with their parents.
Yeah.
And it's a great idea. You know, why would you not do that? Because it's another way of investing and saving for the future, for their future. And I know this carry on about let's spend today, forget about tomorrow. That's fine. That's for that rhetoric is almost herd mentality. That's the people out there that want you to be just like them. Yeah. And that's more likely broke. And for most people, broke at a different level. Another, you've got all the income in the world, but you still can't afford to actually go out for a night, or you can't afford to go away for a holiday because everything's financed up to the hilt, and you're maybe earning a fortune. I was gobsmacked when the people in question to him says, "We can't afford to live on 150,000 a year." What? God. Sorry?
Really?
And the rest of the audience just looked at him and went, "What?" And they went, "Yes, I'm a social worker and I'm two government positions." And I'm thinking, wait a minute, is the government paying a bit too much then?
That's craziness. But yeah, Karen, you made a good point about about the students and things, and starting out maybe like as a live-in landlord. So if your child and things at university and they're who's renting their house like a house to share, you could always flip that idea on its head and help them buy a property, and then they could live in it as the landlord and with other students as lodgers, and that's a good way to make money and things as well. And city towns and things like St Andrews, where student accommodation is very scarce at the moment. Karen, you'll vouch for that when we put property up in St Andrews, how much students we get, and we do have a lot of students, but we don't do HMOs. But there's a big demand, and it spills into the other areas because there's just not enough in St Andrews. But what about Jim? What's your take? They talk about here in the blog about university mortgages or student mortgages, which allows students to buy a home, live in it, have lodgers, and their parents' home or savings acting as security.
Yeah, they become the guarantor.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I did in the beginning. I basically put a house up as security. So the equity that was built up in my house, I put as security, and I got 100% funding from the banks. So that was one way to do it in terms of the route, rather than actually go to a buy-to-let lender who does, though, computer says no, unless it's 75% loan to value, so 25% deposit. The computer says no.
Yeah.
It's like Little Britain. That's effectively what happens, isn't it? And I've been treated like that before, but hey ho, it's just the way it goes. So yes, you can, and I have done in the past, is just put our own home up as security. And you kind of think to yourself, oh, I'm very nervous about that. But the reality is, you're not actually spending the money in your home. You're actually investing it in something else. So, and the asset's still there. And if anything happens, you sell the asset, and then your home's fine. What's and it's fear. It's people that don't understand that process. It become fearful, and it's the old thing about false expectations appearing real. They don't realize it. You just sell the house, and then there's no liability for your house anymore. The security is gone.
Yeah, I know that obviously that's what you've done in the past, and I know that Elaine had was quite apprehensive of you doing that, but obviously you understood it, and because obviously it's at the end of the day it's your home and things, but to use that as something as leverage, as what we spoke about last week on the Verification Show, is use it as leverage.
The first thing everybody thinks about is, what if I lose my home? How can you? Yeah. How's that possible? You've bought another house. Hello, McFly. You bought another house.
Yeah.
It's like you just sell the house. I could have a fire sale tomorrow and sell everything at half the price I bought it for, and I'd still come out with my shirt on my back. So why would I bother? Why would it bother me? Because property prices in their worst case scenario have only dropped 20% at the credit crunch. They're unlikely to drop 50%. And if they do, we're all going to hell in a handbasket. That's the reality.
We're all going down together.
So we're all in the same car. It wouldn't make any difference, would it? What difference would it make to me if the whole market dropped by 50%? We'd all be in trouble. So it's just the way it is. You wouldn't be able to keep anything anyway, even though you didn't have it.
Yeah. But obviously, back to obviously the helping your child, obviously, in the first instance, and building their buy-to-let. We've just spoke about the living landlord thing as a student, and in that aspect, your child could live with their chosen friends and have like a sociable environment, also while learning. And learning valuable skills about managing a property, dealing with emergencies, noise, maintenance, budgeting, all things that you don't get taught in any kind of education form. I mean, at this point in time anyway, none of that's taught at schools or in colleges. Money management, life skills are just not taught, and I think that's a really important thing to be able to make sure your children have. And that way they could save for another property by putting away that rental income, and their first 7,500 of which is tax-free under the government's rent a room scheme thing. But Karen, you'd also done that as well when you used the Help to Buy scheme in Scotland.
I did, yeah. So that was a good bit extra. The amount of money that I'd managed to save up in my Help to Buy ISA, the money that I got back from the government for it basically covered my solicitor fees that I'd put towards. So it was good to have that little extra bit to help. And obviously, the more you save, the more you would have got from it. So I know obviously that's something that they've stopped now, but it is something that if you do have an active one, if you have one still in place, they will uphold it. You just can't make any new ones for it. So I think they realised probably how much money they're shelling out on, but it's a really good incentive for people as well to know that what you're saving, the government will help towards as well if you still have one active.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on the Help to Buy schemes and things, Jim, when they were in place?
Fine, yeah, the boys have got it. They put away £200 a month each. Till there comes some point they'll potentially buy a house, and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. They might even buy one of ours. It just depends what works out at the right time. But for now, see, you don't need to have any definitive plans about what you're going to do, how you're going to do it. Just do it. That's all. Just get started. Now, is it the LISA, the lifetime savings allowance or something like that. It actually still exists, and Help to Buy was actually replaced by it.
Oh, I don't know.
It was replaced by Help to Buy or something like that. There's something. If you check it out, there's maybe some sort of something in some shape or form still exists to that effect.
I think there's a different product, but it's not exactly the same.
It's a different product. Martin Lewis talked about it. If you're in it, get in it now. But also this one's coming up, which is your lifetime savings allowance, and it's a huge package all rolled into one about all the different things that you can do by saving for, and possibly for your first house as well. But again, I don't have a huge amount of knowledge on it, because it's not something I've needed to deal with, because my boys and Tony had done all that beforehand when it was the older scheme.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I think they ran the Help to Buy ISAs, as well as I think there was a lift scheme at the time as well. I don't know if that's still going or not. Like you say, I kind of had
lift still goes. Lifts up to about 200,000 for buying a house, and it helps you with some sort of funding package or low cost funding. But again, it's easy enough for us to put people in touch with the right people in order to advise them of that.
I think the lift scheme seems to have a bit more kind of like financial implications with your home. I don't know exactly which ones, because like I say, I didn't do it. So if you are going with the lift scheme, look into it to make sure that you know all the information.
Yeah. I mean, if you as soon as you enter anything like that, I think it's important to do your research and make sure you're making the right decision. And if you're unsure, speak to the right people who know what they're talking about in that field. And that kind of brings me on quite nicely to what we're going to finish up speaking about today, and it's inspirational people to follow. And as well as great entertainment and distraction, social media is quite remarkable with the amount of information and inspiration about becoming a landlord. But you need to be careful as well. I think that's what I was just going to say, is that who you follow and who you listen to. I know, Jim, that you've learned a lot, and I have as well, but through your journey, you've learned a lot from a really successful people. And you always refer to standing on the shoulders of giants and things. But it's very easy to fall into the trap of listening to people who really maybe aren't the best people to be listening to, and maybe come across as being really successful, or portray themselves to be successful, and maybe they're not, and maybe they're not the best person to be taking advice for. So I think
the rule of thumb.
Yeah.
The rule of thumb there is, if the person's showing off Ferraris and Bentleys and Lamborghinis and big houses, and look at my lifestyle on Instagram, or anything that they're doing in terms of you've maybe had a free workshop, that's the people probably to avoid. I'll honestly say that's probably the rule of thumb. The wealthiest people in this country in terms of property actually don't do things like that. They don't go and teach people how to build wealth. They don't teach people how to do property, because their wealth is built in property. It's not built on selling training courses. And essentially that's what you find. Beware, as the rule of thumb, anybody that's on Instagram or showing you things or telling you about how wonderful this lifestyle is. You know, you get the typical example, and I could see it right now. They're all lying on the bed with their children, and they're in their fluffy robes and white, and they're all got this Instagram photograph, and it's like, look at my wonderful life. You've got to go to work at 8 o'clock tonight, whether you like it or not, because you're still having to sell courses to survive. That's these people. They're called the furus, the fake gurus.
Yeah.
They will prey on people that are vulnerable, and that's a lot of people out there that want to set themselves free, that want financial freedom, and they work on ways strategically and in order how to get you to part with your money on your vulnerability. You don't know what's happening, but it's happening as you're watching their course. It's subliminally built all the way into the upsell, and you feel obliged by the way they've lifted you up and motivated you to the end of it. You almost feel obliged. It's so simple to sign up to this because you've got to be in with that crowd in order to do it. This is called the tribe mentality. Now, this is a human trait way back to caveman days, where people have to be part of a tribe, and this is how they do it with you. They get you to be part of their tribe. They call themselves different types of groups. You know, the mentee group, the I'm not going to say some of the names, because I mean, some of the trainers I know, actually their groups are absolutely fantastic, but they use similar names. But the proteges, and we all know who we're talking about here. That's a classic example of a furu. Lives in this beautiful luxury lifestyle, but that lifestyle is paid for by you. And all that information that you're getting on that course is literally, they're probably just watching our wealth creation show. I'll be honest, they're probably just watching what we do and then just regurgitating it and throwing it out to you and charging you for it.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, you do see quite a lot of that. And one thing I was going to talk about is TikTok influencers are a big thing now. And many young landlords and things are sharing their strategies to encourage people and inspire others to, some with quite good tips and things, but to inspire them to follow suit. And often they use the hashtag property talk and things like that. TikTok can be quite addictive and it can be quite.
They're selling you courses, Richard. Yeah. They're selling courses. You can see it on TikTok. You go straight to their page where their link is and their website or wherever the link tree is or whatever it is, and you go straight to it, and it's like, you can get on my course for 99 quid for the day, and then the day on the 99 quid, it's like, I'm going to upsell you for £3,000 to get on the 3-day intensive workshop. And then you're at the intensive workshop, and the next thing is like a yearly mentorship for £15,000 or £7,000 or £8,000. And people, there's an audience out there for these people because they're only needing a few people to buy into that. A lot of people will buy the book, which is the £10 thing. That's the first interaction. Yeah. Once they get you in the funnel, the sales funnel, they're into the £99 course or for the free course, and then give you beautiful food, wonderful food, make you feel great about yourself at the hotel. And then next comes the upsell for that course, and then the upsell for the mentorship. Now, how do I know that? Because I've been on these training courses that train you how to do that. I've not done it, Richard, but I've been on the training courses. It teach you how to do it.
How to do the funnel,
And I said, there's no way I'm doing that. I stopped halfway through and I says, I am not doing that. That is, to me, that's immoral and underhanded.
It's kind of
and I'll call.
Well,
of course it is, and that's why there's only one or two people that I'll count on my hand that I actually think are really good trainers just now. I would be happy to part with my money for them to train me because I know what they're talking about.
Yeah, that's an invaluable thing in itself to know and be able. I mean, you've obviously learnt that through experience, but to be able to know who are the right people to listen to and who are not. And some people don't, unfortunately, know that and fall foul, and it costs them in terms of monetary value. It costs them. They end up
into the funnel.
So Instagram and TikTok and things have a lot of that on it. TikTok's an amazing platform because the traction and people that you get on it, and it can be used for a lot of good, but unfortunately, there's a lot of bad on it as well. The next person I was going to talk about was you mentioned Martin Lewis as well, Jim. And Martin Lewis is a great source of independent advice for all things money, including some excellent tips on where to save cash and the best returns and ease of access and things. Especially, we've seen him do that with the utility cost issues and things as well recently. Would you agree that Martin's advice is good for the most part, or is there anything where you would maybe disagree?
No, everything that comes out of Martin Lewis's mouth is gospel, as far as I'm concerned. But Martin Lewis caters to the masses, not to private landlords or anybody like that. They just Martin Lewis is all about trying to save money, not necessarily trying to make money.
Mm-hmm.
And in the mindset of actually creating wealth, you have to learn how to make money, not necessarily save money. Now, there's a classic example right now. I have a Vodafone. You know, there's other people available, by the way. A Vodafone battery I've just hired at Glastonbury, and it's supposed to give you one full charge for the day, and it's 77% it gave me last night from zero. So 77%, I could go down to that tent right now and say, you're ripping me off because it's meant to be 5 days, and I'm only getting 4 days worth of the same amount of money. But by the time I've done that and wasted all my time, I've lost the money and the time. So there's no point in doing it. So you have to, and there's the difference. People in that save money mindset will immediately go down and complain about that and spend all that time doing it. But they could have gone out and worked for someone else for a couple of hours that they'd spent complaining and earned more than what it cost them to try and save that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah, definitely. And do you know, that's something that you've taught me, Jim, because I mean, I maybe was in that save money mindset, and I will always look at things now like, is that really worth my time? No. And I always think about that now. It's like it's become second nature, but unless you really think about that or change your mindset to think like that, then you're it's a bit of a broke mentality because it's just not worth your while to go and squabble over the percentage that you were lost in terms of money terms and your time and what it's worth. Karen, what's your take on?
And you can get caught up in a point of principle. I'll come to you in a minute, Karen. You can get caught up in a point of principle, which is what I do all the time. No, I need to make a point. and sometimes it's like, Jim, for God's sake, slap yourself across the face, let it go and move on, because it'll cost you more money trying to make this point. But you'll never. Here's a great phrase that I was taught by Keith Cunningham: you could be right or you could be rich, but you can't be both. And it's like, oh my God, you're absolutely right. I never thought it. See what I mean about that? You could be right. No, I'm right. I'm going to fight to the death with you about this. It's like for over 50 pence. I saved 50 pence. And he just spent the last 10 hours trying to do it. It's like, but I'm right. It's like, you could be right or you could be rich, but you can't be both.
And a lot of people will struggle to walk away, even if it was just down to 50 pence. A lot of people would struggle just to forget about it and walk away.
Of course.
It's what you could do with your time, though, as opposed to fighting for that 50 pence. Like, you could have made yourself £5 instead of fighting for that 50 pence and the time that you spent for that. And it's reflect that into like having landlords that have their properties managed. They might be paying for that service, but think of all the time that frees up for them. Because I mean, I know it's a lot of time that we put into it. So for managing obviously the portfolio that we have. So imagine how much time a landlord would spend having to keep up with the legislation, make sure their property is being looked after, make sure their rent's being paid on time, all these kind of things that go into it. It's like you might be paying for that, but think of all the time that's freeing up for you to be going and making yourself more money, investing your time, investing your money into other sources, as opposed to all the little things that go into it.
Yeah, you do have.
I don't think the landlords realise how much we do for them in the background. And there's often a time I keep feeling coming to you, Richard, and saying, cut these people loose. This is costing us an absolute fortune to look after their property, and we've got no respect from them for doing that, because they think it's money for old rope. They don't realise the amount of stuff that we're doing in the background for them. But I liken having managed property to an insurance policy, and what it means if it all goes up. You know the phrase. If it all goes up at some point in time, I'm talking about a different phrase. If it all goes whatever up.
Oh, right, okay.
Yes, that one. When it all goes up in the air, this is when your management kicks in, because all the time that you're paying effectively maybe £60-100 for a month is literally gone in a couple of hours, and we're spending about 6 hours on that job, and that's when you get your money's worth. So I liken having property management almost like an insurance policy.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think the majority of landlords do understand that. Although things maybe are quiet, that's what you want things to be quiet. You don't want to hear from your managing agent, but you want to know that they're there and ready to act on your behalf and be able to do that confidently and quite quickly. And that's what we're there to do. And a lot of landlords do understand that, but you'll have the odd landlord and be like, and the phrase is, what are we paying you for? Well, for the years of experience you've got behind you, if anything goes wrong. And to me, and the 9 times out of 10, the reason that you don't hear from your managing agent or your tenant is because things are going smoothly, because your managing agent's dealing with it all as they're meant to.
That's when you find out a landlord should not be a landlord or an investor, when they actually equate what they're paying us for into an hourly rate.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you realise that they shouldn't be an investor or a landlord. You just don't get it if that's the case. Because it's the classics, what you say, Richard, is what are we paying you for if you're not actually like if everything's going swimmingly well, why are we paying you? And it's like, oh, no. The reason it's going swimmingly well It's the very fact that all the knowledge and experience and expertise that we've applied to it, we've learned from all these years before. You're not paying me for the time and effort now. You're paying me for everything I've done before. It leads to this point where you don't have any hassle in your property.
Yeah, I've had a few over the years. Like, everything's going so well, I'll just do it myself. And I've tried to advise them otherwise. They go ahead and do it, and then subsequently they're back with you. Yeah, they come back and be like, you have to deal with this.
But that's what I say to new landlords that I'm meeting out with. I'm like, ideally, all you should be hearing from us is your monthly statement and your property inspections. I was like, if you're hearing from us, then obviously there's maybe something that's needing repairs done, but ideally in our industry, no news is good news. You should only be getting your paperwork through, because that means that we're doing our job and we're dealing with your tenant, and you're not getting those annoying phone calls that you ideally don't want.
You don't want all the fuss and the hustle and things like you plug in all the time, Jim. Boring pays well, and if you're not hearing anything, then that's good, because you're getting the income, your tenant's happy in their home, and that's all that matters. So yeah, I mean, and back to the topic for today. I think with just to kind of wrap up, with so many young people feeling that they'll maybe never own a property, it's all about showing. If you're obviously your children and things, showing them that it is actually possible, and that as soon as a child starts following maybe investors and experts in that field on certain platforms and things, it will feed them with content that will then plant the seed on them becoming successful landlords and investors, and you could help them on that journey. And I think that's what we've tried to cover today, and I hope that's come through about obviously setting your children up so that they become financially free a lot sooner in life than maybe you did, or do you know what I mean? And that is what the topic for today was, and basically helping your children build their own success and their own true buy-to-let, and creating their own buy-to-let business.
Yeah.
Anything you want to finish up with today, Jim?
There's no. Who said home ownership has to happen? I'm coming back to saying it's the pressure we get from our peers, but it's also the pressure we get from society in general, driven by the banks. Again, I come back to saying the banks just want to sell you a mortgage, and the only way they can sell you a mortgage, a loan, because that's how they make their money, is for you to own a house.
Yeah.
When we look at the continent, it's not like that. We look at anywhere else. Look at some of the most successful people in the world, some of the billionaires. They actually don't even own homes. They rent all the time.
Yeah.
That's how they do it.
Yeah.
Musk's couch surfs on his friends' couches. Richard Branson doesn't own a home, and yet everybody says, oh, Richard Branson owns loads of homes. No, he doesn't. Necker Island's owned by his company. It's not. He doesn't own anything at all. It's his company owns everything. Most of the most successful people in the world don't own homes. They own real estate in different guises, but they don't personally own a home themselves. And so in order to succeed in life, it doesn't mean to say you have to own a home. You just have to be savvy in how you invest your money for the future and stick to that plan and work it. That's how you become extremely successful in anything.
Yeah, I think that's really wise words to finish up on today. Karen, thanks for joining us. You got anything you want to add before we finish up?
Well, just like Jim says, it's your money savviness that'll get you through your life and make you successful for it. At a young age, my advice is save what you can, whether that's £5, £50, £100. Have that savings pot, even if it's a penny saver. That's what's going to obviously build you up when you get to the point where you do want to either buy a property for yourself, go into a rented property, or do an investment. So having the funds behind you is the key to getting yourself started.
Yeah, I think it's so important now for if you've got kids, please help them get set up for later on in life, and whether that's even starting up pensions when they're born. Jim spoke about that, helping them when they get to a certain age, learn the skills of money management and just general life skills that you just won't get taught in schools.
Yeah, we do not get any of that at school. School is definitely failing us on that side. It is this job that has taught me my life skills. So it's teaching your kids the life skills that they need. How to pressurize a boiler. teach your kids how to bleed a radiator and how to
It's
save.
amazing what people don't know how to do. But
Yeah.
Hey, save yourself a fortune. It's like how to bleed a radiator. You'll be charged 50 quid for somebody coming to do that as a plumber, and it's literally so easy to do. You can literally do it in about 5 minutes. Now, that is an
I can
effective
do it,
use of
you
your
can
time.
do it.
You know, that's a good return. So you've hit the nail on the head. This is all about life skills, Karen. And to everybody out there, you could thank me in 30 years' time for following this plan.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it will make you successful instantly in 30 years' time. You will be super wealthy. You will be able to retire. It will allow you to have the choices that you want. It will have your family and your children the choices as well, because you'll have done something about it now. And your children that possibly aren't even born yet will have all the choices available to them. They'll be able to go to the best colleges, the best universities. You'll be able to pick and choose where they want to go, because you'll have built that wealth in order to allow them to be able to do that. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. And if you do it well enough, it'll carry on right through generations.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's taught and taught and taught and taught. And they'll all understand it. And everybody else will stand on the shoulders of giants that have come before them, and they'll learn all these things in advance. This is how AI, this is where I'll end up. This is what AI is doing right now. This is how families become super wealthy, because they all teach each other. They'll all download their information to their children, and their children take that information and move on. What AI does straight away is when one learns, every single one of them connected to it learns straight away. That's essentially how all these families built their wealth over hundreds of years, generations. And that's the perfect place to end this.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, thanks very much for joining us this morning, Jim. I'm glad that your connection and that held out, because obviously you've got quite a lot to interject into that subject, which I think everybody will find quite helpful. Monday, we are, myself and Perry are doing the Wealth Creation Show. We're doing positive attitude as a skill, and we're going to be talking about that on Monday, so please join us then. But until then, I will leave it there. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks, Karen, for joining. And like I say, Jim, thanks for tuning in while you are away. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. And wear sunscreen. You look like
beautiful sunshine.
You look like you've got the sun.
Beautiful sunshine.
Yeah, so sunscreen, I think, is in order. Right, thanks, guys. I'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.